Please join me in welcoming Rhonda up.
Perhaps you've heard of my city. Home of Al Capone, deep dish pizza, Chicago-style hot dogs, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, the Sears Tower, they call it the Willis Tower, but it's the Sears Tower, amazing architecture, and some of the finest museums and restaurants. This is Chicago, the Windy City. Or perhaps you've heard of the other Chicago, referred to by another term that, unlike the Windy City name, most Chicagoans do not embrace, Chirac. Comparing Chicago to Iraq, extreme, you might say. According to the Chicago Tribune newspaper, in one of its most violent 4th of July weekends in recent years, at least 102 people were shot between late Friday afternoon and early Wednesday. Of this number, 15 people were killed, the majority of the violence being confined to the south and west sides of the city. My name is Rhonda Scullark, and the heart of the South Side of Chicago is where I teach at Perspectives Charter School for students in grades 6 through 12. This is our reality. Founded by two Chicago public school teachers, Kim Day and Diana Shulikos, our school's foundation lies in 26 principles for living, known as the Disciplined Life Principles, or ADL for short. Our students have the advantage of having these classes as part of their daily curriculum, and it changes their lives. As an educator for over 15 years and mom of 3 daughters, I truly believe that every kid can be saved, can be successful, and can go to college, and can be ethical leaders in our world. So finding perspectives was a perfect fit for me. So why me and USIP? One of our 26 ADL principles that is life-changing and speaks to my heart's work is solve conflicts peacefully. So the opportunity to work with USIP and teach my students to expand on this principle from a global peacemaking perspective was phenomenal. At Perspectives, teaching peace is an integral part of our everyday curriculum. I serve as a peace ambassador and advisor for our peace team. We share our I Am for Peace documentary across the city. We have peace initiatives and challenges throughout our 5 schools, and we have an annual peace march every June. The opportunity to work with USIP just seemed to be a natural fit, and it truly was. Thank you. So, I had this lofty beginning of the year vision to equip my students to be global peace builders. Oh, my paper is hitting me. Okay, thank you. Okay, so did I do it? Did I meet my goal? So the song from the musical Rent, Seasons of Love, asks the question, how do you measure a year? I measure a year through the stories of our kids, through our peace work, and how that shapes every facet of their lives. The statistics, such as the ones I quoted, will tell you that peace seems impossible, unattainable. But this program with USIP helped my students think through peace and conflict from a global lens, which led to new ideas and perspectives. Their stories are the triumphs. This is how you measure a year. Megan of USIP helped us connect with the founder of One African Child Foundation and a fellow in USIP's Generation Change program, Victoria. Our Skype conversations with Victoria about what it means to be a peace builder in Nigeria were extremely impactful for my students. Seeing this young woman's amazing and courageous work wound up being just the student buy-in that I needed. As teachers, we like to start new lesson units with a hook, something to get our students engaged. Victoria was our hook. She helped us start asking the question of what does peace look like in practice across the world, and how can we use those practices in our peace work as student leaders in Chicago? One of my students, Jade, was especially inspired by Victoria's story and led to me using the phrase, "What would Victoria do?" when students voiced their challenges and their frustrations. I'll admit, I even use it in times when they gave me homework excuses, and I say, "What would Victoria do?" Jay joined our Peace team this year, and one of my proudest moments as a teacher came through an experience with Jade. She brought 2 students to me during my lunch, and if there's any teachers in the house, you know how you just love seeing students at lunch, right? No, I don't. But she brought 2 students to me during lunchtime, and she asked to serve as their mediator, which floored me. As I watched and listened to her use terms straight out of our educator's toolkit, like, let's figure out their conflict styles, Ms. Scullark. And the 2 girls actually followed her lead and listened to her. By the end of this short lunch period, the girls had found common ground and shared really intimate stories. All I did was sit back and eat my lunch and listen. Jade has used her voice to advocate for peace, and when she expressed her nervousness before a radio show interview, I egged her on with, "What would Victoria do?" Jade's triumph was my triumph. This is how I measure a year. It's amazing to work every day and do something you're passionate about. By working through the lessons in the Peace Building Toolkit for educators, my students expanded their definition of peace and grasped the concept of peace being formed by multiple perspectives. So when we had to brainstorm things to do for our Peace Day challenge, they felt it was important to take this knowledge literally to the streets. We went to busy street corners in our school community, and the students talked to whoever would listen about our 6 peace stamps that we use, peace steps that we use at Perspectives, and asked people to take the peace challenge. Watching students like Jaquan and Kayla engage fearlessly with complete strangers and speak passionately and knowledgeably about peace without my input was a sight to behold. Yet another triumph. This is how I measure a year. Feel free to sing the song at any point if you like. As the 2016-17 school year began, Trinity, my 8th grade student, as you see pictured on the left in the black shirt, had been a member of the Peace team for the 2 previous years. Extremely bright but a bit shy, Trinity will be the first to tell you that she does not enjoy public speaking, nor participating in discussions with people she's never met. But then came her peace work. Another one of my proudest moments came when my colleague coordinated a day for our Peace Team students to visit New Trier High School, a school far different from ours as far as racial makeup and socioeconomic status. We spent the day engaged in critical conversations focused on life in the inner city versus life at New Trier. We talked about disparities in education, economics, and opportunities. Our exploration of global peace-building strategies helped prepare my students for this day because they knew that despite differences, there's always some common ground to be found. To look over and see Trinity engaged and comfortable in the discussions spoke volumes about how far she's come. Though so many other big things came of this day, as we continue to build a relationship with the students at New Trier and the school, seeing Trinity in this element was a triumph. This is how I measure a year. And then, my turn to feel discouraged and hopeless came on April 19, 2017. Violence hit home for me. My nephew, Jeremy Scullark, was shot and killed by a 19-year-old. Everything that I told my students felt like a lie. I felt like everything we were doing hadn't made a difference. My nephew was gone, senselessly. And for once, I didn't have the answers. I was angry, I was sad. It felt so ironic and heartbreaking at the same time. 10 days later, on April 29th, Tevin Jones, one of my former students who was a junior in our high school upstairs, was killed. This was the kid whose infectious smile had you smiling with him. He really was the peacemaker. He treated everyone with love and respect. And if he saw you needed a friend, he became yours. I won't even talk about what a beast he was as a track star. At his funeral, I heard story after story of the positive influence he'd had on the lives of people around him. Again, so much promise gone. Our staff and students were hit hard. Each year, it seemed that I was attending more student funerals than graduations. The loss of my nephew and then Tevin shook me to the core. Nobel Peace Prize recipient Albert Schweitzer said, "At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us." So just when my spark went out, it was lit from an unlikely source for which I will always be grateful. Meet Godfrey. If there ever was a turnaround kid, this is him. Sleeping in class, disrespectful to teachers, barely doing work, this is the Godfrey I met 5 years ago. But his experiences as a young Black male, losing a brother to gun violence, made him an advocate for change. Godfrey, this kid, on the day he received his first college acceptance letter, brought it down to my classroom, and I cried like a baby. He's the one who made me remember that our work matters, and it is making a difference. As a senior this year in high school, in our high school upstairs, one day Godfrey visited me in my class, and he shared with me his plans for Phoenix Haven, a youth community center designed to keep kids safe, which won him first place in our regional network for teaching entrepreneurship competition, and he will now be going on to compete at the national level in New York City. He thanked me for never giving up on him and stated that his teachers helped save him from a life on the streets. And instead, he's headed to college. This June, he stood on the stage of our annual Peace March and spoke of his experience. I stood next to his mother and I said, "Look at our baby. This is my triumph. This is how I measure a year." In our buildings, we challenge our kids to think critically, ask questions, and we support them as they put to work solutions to action. Another one of our ADL principles is to be a lifelong learner, and working with Megan and Louise, Laura, Latricia, and Matt in our teacher cohort has been phenomenal in ensuring that I am continually learning and evolving. But what about the kids who don't have ADL? What about those who don't have a teacher who works with USIP? I had the great privilege, and I'm glad he's back with us, of meeting Ambassador Moose today, who sits on the board of USIP, and he reminded us that though conflict is inevitable, violent conflict is not. Teaching my kids these lessons now can prepare them to be the next ambassadors and leaders working to achieve peace, not just in Chicago, not just in their communities, but around the world. So how might the stories of Jade, Trinity, Godfrey, Jaquan, and Kayla, and so many others be different? As for me, I'll keep doing my part, and these 3 words couldn't be more fitting: to be continued. So I'd like to leave you with the quote one of our founders always uses that really motivates me. "A small group of thoughtful people could change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rhonda.